Hey everyone, it's Zoe here from Living with a Sleeve. I'm really excited to get back onto Facebook Live. I've been away for a couple of weeks in Holland and in Europe, and I wanted to just get back in touch with you all. And one thing that came up this week in the clinic was talking about eating out and how to manage eating out, especially when you're traveling. And seeing as I've just been traveling, I thought it was a perfect time to have that chat with you and sort of, I guess, answer questions, any questions that you have, and also talk about how to manage eating out while you're away, because sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. I think what I want to do to start with, just while we wait for a few people to log on, is talk about eating out in general, and then I'll open up questions to any of you if you've got anything specific that you wanted to know. People often struggle with eating out just because I think there's so much going on. So when you're at home, you get in your little routine, you know what you're eating, you know that you've eaten it before probably, and that it works and it sits well. You also know that you are in a common environment, there's not too many distractions, so you can pace yourself a little bit better. And what tends to happen when you're eating out is that there's so much happening. Often you're out with people, and so you are maybe getting a bit distracted. There's people walking in and out of the restaurant, there's all these options to choose on the menu, and that often will make people feel quite sick after a meal, not necessarily because of the food that they've chosen, which sometimes is the case if it's more oily or sugary than you would normally have, but really commonly it's just because you haven't been concentrating on how you've eaten, because there's all of this distraction and it's a different environment. What happens is, if you eat too fast or you eat too much, or your mouthfuls are a little bit too big, is that they'll feel like it's getting stuck here in your esophagus, in between your esophagus and your stomach, and then often you'll feel pretty sick and maybe bring up your food as well, which isn't ideal. So the things to think about when you are eating out to avoid that pain and trauma and suffering is really to concentrate, okay? First things first, look at the menu. Often order off the entree menu, because main meals they're just too big. Another thing you can do is share with a bunch of people, but try and still go for good quality, okay? Try and still pick things that have got protein and veggies in them. And if you feel like there's nothing there for you that you can eat, then ask for something. Just ask for some modifications on the main menu. Ask if you can order something from the kids menu, or ask if you can have an entree or a finger food, like an appetizer, a finger food type dish made a bit bigger. Often if you explain that you have some dietary restrictions, then chefs and the kitchen staff are really happy to make those changes for you. So that's number one. When you're choosing, concentrate, think about your choice, think about how you can share with others. And then a second thing would be to actually ask for a bread and butter plate, and then put your portion of what you want to eat, what you expect that you should be able to eat, onto that bread and butter plate. Because what can happen is, if you're grazing, so you pick a little bit from there, 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 you don't really know how much you've eaten over that meal. And sometimes that can mean that you eat a bit more than you would normally, and then again you can make yourself feel sick. So what I would do is get a bread and butter plate. If you've got a big portion, the same thing applies. Cut off what you think that you should be able to eat, and then put it on the bread and butter plate so that you can eat from there, and know then what you've eaten, how much you've eaten, and make sure that you don't make yourself feel uncomfortable. The next thing I would do is really try to concentrate on what you're doing. Despite everything that's happening around you, the conversation, people walking in and out, still try and concentrate on what you're doing. Sometimes people will get really excited because it's a good food, it's something they haven't had for a while, they're excited to be out, and the first couple of mouthfuls they'll eat are too big and too fast. So before you even pick up your knife and fork, spend the time to just make a little mental note to yourself and say, okay, I'm going to eat slowly, I'm going to take really small mouthfuls, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to chew my food properly, because if you don't chew your food properly, if your mouthfuls are too big, if you eat too fast, that's when you're going to make yourself feel uncomfortable. The last thing I would do is think about alcohol and your drinks. Even if they're non-alcoholic, how are you going to manage your drinks? Because we know after a sleeve you can't eat and drink at the same time. So what will we do? Will I have a glass there while I'm eating my meal, or will that actually just tempt me into eating and drinking at the same time? Or what might work better for most people is when you get to a restaurant, sit down, order a drink, so say it's a glass of wine, sit there, have your glass of wine. When you order your food, stop drinking. Okay, normally we need to leave about 10-15 minutes before your meal where you haven't had a drink, and then about 20 to 30 minutes after your meal before you start drinking again. So whatever's left in your glass, when you order your food, stop drinking. That usually gives you enough time for the food to arrive, for the liquid to have gone down. Eat your meal, eat it really slowly, chew your food properly, take small mouthfuls, and then after you've finished your meal, give it 20 minutes or so, perhaps when everybody else is having dessert, then pick up your glass again, okay? I find that eating and drinking is probably one of the most difficult things. You don't want alcohol to be replacing your meal, so you don't want to drink too close to your meal, but you also don't want to be overfilling yourself after your stomach is already full by drinking too close to the end of your meal. So what tends to work well is that timing. So waiting when you order your food, stop drinking, and then wait sort of 20 minutes or so after your meal. If you've got any questions about eating out, really just post them in the comments section, or feel free to post them on the Living with a Sleeve page and I can get back to you. I'll also put in the comments a link to an article I've written about eating out. And the last thing that I sort of wanted to kind of bring to your attention is the choices that you make when you're eating out. If it's that you don't eat out very often, it's not going to be the end of the world if you have a bit of pasta, or you have a little bit of bread, or you have a spoon or two of dessert. Like, don't feel like you can't eat any of those foods. I don't like counting calories. I don't like restricting people too much. I don't like placing more sort of diety rules around you. And I think it's really important to go out and enjoy good food and choose what you really feel like and eat it and enjoy it and get satisfaction from it. So when you do eat out, when you have made your choice, don't feel guilty about it. Just enjoy it, savor it, take your time with it, concentrate on how you're eating it. And if you've got any more questions, please just feel free to post them in the comments section, or post them or just on my page, on the Living with a Sleeve page. All right, thanks so much for joining. Those of you that did join, I haven't had any questions yet, but feel free to post them. If you're watching the replay later, just post them in the comments, and I will be back at you live again on Wednesday next week. If you've got any questions that you want me to discuss in one of these live videos, also just please post them. If you're embarrassed, send me a private message and I can have a bit of a chat about that in the live sessions coming up. Okay, thanks so much guys. Have a great day. Bye.